Hello and welcome to my next video. Now this video, is the latest video on my new opponent rankings playlist, where I will over time build up a leaderboard, basically scoring fighters' level of wins throughout their career, factoring every single opponent in the scoring system. Again, as a disclaimer on the videos, I'm not covering every single opponent because when I start working on Fighter 4 today, Harry Greb, it would take a long time. So we're not going to do that. We cover the main opponents. Now I covered James J. Jeffries, who currently sits at the top of the leaderboard, hence being the only fighter in there. But now I had another great fighter from the time. Not a heavyweight, but the middleweight puncher Stanley Ketchel. So we will go through his opponents and list his career score for the quality of his wins and show the new leaderboard at the end. So let us go to first slide. And I have to admit, in fact, I'll wait till I get on the slide for that. So just basically, I'm not going to go through this crazy every single time. Fighters are rated on 6 levels: elite, world champion, contender, fringe contender, journeyman, and no-hoper, with differing levels of points awarded for each opponent in that category. Some of them are already causing me headaches because they were contenders, but they're in the Hall of Fame. They were never world champions. So, I'm having to use basically my knowledge of the fighters to judge if they go above contender into elite. And on fighter number 3, a few fighters go into that category. So, as well as those points there for their opponent rating, they can score additional opponents 3 points each in those 6 categories, being a champion, Hall of Famer, pound for pounder, lineal champion, undisputed champion, and multi-weight champion. Now, I have to admit, on the first opponent slide, I made a bit of a boo-po. I listed the fighter in question as a Hall of Famer. That fighter is Mike Twin Sullivan, of course. He's not a Hall of Famer, so my apologies for that little boo-boo. Fighter number 3, I've gone down his slide and double-checked everything to make sure. And I actually didn't list a pound for pounder as a pound for pounder as well, but I caught that one because I've now put in stringent double-checks. So, my apologies for that. But the first opponent of Stanley Ketchel is Mike Twin Sullivan. Ketchel scored 1 win against Mike Twin Sullivan. Mike Twin Sullivan scores in rating B. Mike Twin Sullivan defeated fighters including Honey Melody, Dixie Kid. He scored 3 wins over Jimmy Gardner, 2 wins over Paddy Lavin, wins over Young Lowry, Otto Seeloff, Frank Fields, and Terry Martin. Mike Twin Sullivan was a world champion. He is not a Hall of Famer. He was a former pound for pound rated fighter, and he was, of course, for a short time, a lineal and undisputed world champion. Mike Twin Sullivan was never a multi-weight champion, former welterweight title holder. So Mike Twin Sullivan is opponent number 1. When we go to opponent number 2, is fellow middleweight, top-level middleweight from the time, Billy Papke. Now, Billy Papke, Stanley Ketchel scored 3 wins against Billy Papke from their 4-fight series. Billy Papke scores in the B ranking, and he defeated fighters including Stanley Ketchel, George Carpentier, Willie Lewis 2 times, Hugo Kelly 2 times, Frank Mantell, Joe Thomas, Jack Twin Sullivan, Tommy Sullivan, and Dave Smith. And Billy Papke was a world champion and is a Hall of Famer. Unlike Sullivan, he was also a pound for pound rated fighter in his time. Papke was also a lineal and undisputed champion, albeit briefly. But Billy Papke was one of the top middleweights of his era, behind Ketchel without a shadow of a doubt. And he also was regarded as one of the fighters who, after Ketchel was killed, would take over, although one writer famously said if he does fight Langford, it will be blown away inside of a round or 2. I always remember reading this article where this boxing writer at the time, it was after Ketchel had been killed, and he was discussing if Langford could make middleweight, how would he do against Papke, Klaus, all these guys, and basically were like, Langford will go through him. I mean, he'll destroy all of them. He was that regarded as a middleweight in his time. Something he doesn't really get much credit for, partially due to lack of extensive work at middleweight. But there is Billy Papke, fantastic fighter from his time. 3 wins for Stanley Ketchel there on rating B. So going on to our next opponent, it is the great Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, one of the all-time greats of his time. Stanley Ketchel scored 2 wins against Philadelphia Jack O'Brien. O'Brien, of course, is pure rank A, elite level, one of the great fighters of his time, as I said. Jack O'Brien defeated, and this isn't a full list, okay, it's a list that filled the box, Bobby Dobbs, young Peter Jackson 3 times, Frank Craig, Barbados Joe Walcott, Marvin Hart, George Byers, Bob Fitzsimmons, Joe Butler, Tommy Burns, Dixie Kidd, Joe Troinski 2 times, Jack Blackburn, Charlie McKeever 5 times, Peter Marr 2 times, Tommy West, George Cole 7 times, Jack Twin Sullivan 3 times, and a whole plethora more. Now, Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, of course, was a world champion. He was also a Hall of Fame fighter and a pound-for-pound rated fighter. He was also, again, briefly a lineal and undisputed light heavyweight champion, of course. He left light heavyweight to go to heavyweight, pursuing big money fights, but he'd fought fighters from middleweight to heavyweight. I mean, an incredible career. Clearly rank A, like I said, one of the great fighters of his time. Jack O'Brien did only hold a title at light heavyweight, so he was never a multi-weight champion. So there's 2 standout wins for Ketchel there. So going on to our next opponent, it is one of the tough contenders of his time, Willie Lewis, who never managed to capture a title. Willie Lewis comes in at rank C. He defeated in his career fighters including Hattie Lewis 3 times, Joe Gans, Honey Melody, Dixie Kidd 2 times. He also defeated Jimmy Gardner, Joe Tipman, Martin Cannoli, Curly Watson, and fighters like Marcel Moreau, amongst others. Willie Lewis was never a world champion and he's not in the Hall of Fame. He was a pound-for-pound rated fighter in his time. He was never a lineal champion nor undisputed champion. And Willie Lewis, of course, was never a multi-weight champion. But one of the tough contenders of his time, he indeed was. So that is a C rank win for Ketchel there. And when we go on, okay, to our next fighter, it is another of the outstanding middleweight contenders of his time, Hugo Kelly, a very, very capable fighter. Stanley Ketchel scored 1 win against Hugo Kelly. Hugo Kelly is rated level C. He held wins in his career over fighters such as Philadelphia Jack O'Brien, who I've just mentioned, Frank Klaus 2 times, Rube Ferns, Owen Ziegler, Charlie McKeever, Mike Shrek, Mike Donovan. Some people may not know Ferns and Ziegler, McKeever, Shrek and Donovan. They are all very, very tough contenders. Very good wins indeed. Hugo Kelly also defeated fighters like Jack Twin Sullivan, one of Ketchel's great rivals, of course, Joe Thomas, Eddie McGaughty, Tommy Sullivan and Cyclone Johnny Thompson. Now, Hugo Kelly is not a world champion. He's also not a Hall of Famer. He was not pound-for-pound rated, so thus with no world champion status. He was never a lineal champion, undisputed champion or multi-weight champion, but he certainly was a very, very tough and capable contender. So, going on to our next opponent, okay, it is Jack Twin Sullivan, the brother of a fighter already featured, Mike Twin Sullivan. Okay, Jack Twin Sullivan. Ketchel scored 1 win against Jack Twin Sullivan, again is rated rank C. He defeated fighters in his career including Tommy Burns, Bartlin Levinsky, Patsy Sweeney, Mike Shrek, George Cole, the aforementioned Hugo Kelly, who we've just covered. He also beat middleweight to heavyweight puncher Nick Burley 3 times, and Ketchel rival Joe Thomas 2 times. Now, Jack Twin Sullivan also was never a world champion. He was also never a Hall of Fame fighter or a pound-for-pound rated fighter. And Sullivan, of course, was never a lineal champion, undisputed champion, or a multi-weight champion. So there is Ketchel's latest opponent, another C-ranked win. And that covers the bulk of Ketchel's main opponents, okay? So when we go on to his score slide, going through the categories, okay, we see Stanley Ketchel scored 40 points Type A. Type B, he scored 60 points. He scored 72 points for level C, 36 points for level D, 18 points for level E, and 31 points for level F. Ketchel also scored bonus points. His opponent scored bonus points of 18 for world champion, 18 for Hall of Famer, 21 points for pound fighter, and 18 points for both lineal champion and undisputed champion. Ketchel's opponents scored no points as multi-weight champions. So when we look at Ketchel's overall score, Stanley Ketchel comes in with a total of 350 points. Now, I have done Fighter 3. I'm deliberating, since it's my last day off, I'm deliberating whether to do him this afternoon. Okay, that is the Manasseh Mauler Jack Dempsey. That will then be 3 fighters I have on my shortlist, my scoreboard, before I then proceed, okay, to go into the insane world of Harry Greb, who will be my 4th entry. I wanted some entries on the scoreboard first, so people will see the difference, okay, laid out here like this. They will see the difference between Jeffries, Ketchel, Dempsey, and then Harry Greb, okay, and you'll see a clear difference. I think I may have to do that Jack Dempsey video as well. But Ketchel scores 350 points, so clearly people who saw the first video yesterday will realise Ketchel has now gone into first place on my new scoreboard. James Shea Jeffries scored 307 points. Ketchel betters that with a total of 350 points. Will Ketchel be able to hold that position against Jack Dempsey himself? Well, we will see. In fact, I'll give it half an hour, and then why not? I'll do that one as well, just to be a pain, and then I'll get cracking on with Harry Greb's what is going to be insane opponent video. In fact, I've been doing initial look at Greb, and I may have to do it over 2 videos, both over an hour long each. So yes, it's going to be a big one, but I'll see what happens. So there is Stanley Ketchel. He's my 2nd fighter on my new opponent scoreboard, bettering Jeffries into first place. We'll see when Dempsey comes shortly how well Jack Dempsey does, and if Jack Dempsey can usurp both Jeffries and Ketchel to take number 1 spot. So I will see you on that one. Okay, Jack Dempsey coming soon, but there is the video on Stanley Ketchel, who at the moment goes into first place, albeit I don't think he'll stay there very long. But we will see. I'm the Boxing Librarian. I'm out for now.